action where they built a mock wall and locked themselves inside it. They blockaded a road that Israelis were using to transport building materials. And the Israelis and Palestinians locked themselves together inside this wall and made it much more difficult for the soldiers to get them out and arrested. Despite the creative and clearly nonviolent nature of these demonstrations, we are met with very, very fierce and brutal repression on the part of the Israeli military. Mass arrests of both Palestinians as well as Israelis and internationals. There's never a demonstration that doesn't end without several people being arrested, if not dozens. Tear gas, beatings, rubber bullets, rubber-coated bullets, and even the use of live gunfire on unarmed, nonviolent demonstrators, a regular scene. And sometimes towards the end of the demonstrations, after Israelis have used an overwhelming amount of violence, young Palestinian men and boys will begin to throw stones or use slingshots to drive the soldiers back out of the village. In many ways, a Palestinian child with a rock going up against a US-funded Israeli tank is a very graphic representation of the conflict in terms of the power dynamic, the overwhelming Israel as the 5th strongest nuclear power in the world, and Palestine is one of the poorest third world countries. But it's also evidence of the determination and the courage of the Palestinians that despite these overwhelming odds, they will continue to stand up and resist. And in addition to the existence as resistance that we see in Tawani, or the popular nonviolent resistance like we see in Beduin, there is also armed struggle in Palestine. Palestinians have a long history of resisting occupation and colonialism. They resisted the British, they resisted the Ottomans before that, and they continue to resist the Israelis through a variety of tactics, largely nonviolent popular existence kind of tactics, but there is armed struggle involved. These are martyr posters that are made for Palestinians who give their lives to the struggle for freedom. Of course, the tactic of the armed resistance that we hear the most about in our media are the civilian targeting, the suicide bombings in Israel. This is a very small tactic compared to the rest of the resistance movement in Palestine. It's a fairly new tactic that was developed in response to the overwhelming brutality of the Sharon administration, as well as because Palestinians feel so backed to a wall and having lost significantly from the Oslo peace Accords, they are resorting to more immense forms of struggle. And so you can understand the hopelessness and the despair that would lead a Palestinian to do something like this. We also have to remember that it is part of a military campaign. The Palestinians are waging for their existence as a people. They're fighting for survival. And though they may use tactics that we may not agree with or consider ugly, we have to remember that the root of this violence is the Israeli occupation and colonization and the US Western support for that. Indeed, this really is a US occupation. The US gives Israel $5 to $12 billion of US tax money every year. This is more money than we give to any other country in the world. It's more money than we give the entire continent of Africa. And Israel is the 14th most industrialized nation in the world. We're giving them more money than all of Africa. And it really makes this Israeli violence and colonization possible. Israel wouldn't be able to afford to have this kind of military buildup without US funding and weapons supply. But they also wouldn't be able to get away with it on the international scene. The US systematically vetoes UN resolutions that might bring a just solution.